Those organ systems were first whispering and I didn't listen, and then they started to yell louder and louder and louder, and the question was, what's wrong with me? Focused on meditation, and reprogramming my nervous system. Our body is giving us a lot of information, and it's that information, again, is different for everyone. You cannot do vagus nerve training without taking time to understand your triggers.
Former midwife, biohacker, founder and CEO of Dragonfly Health, and someone on a mission to transform global health. Our guest today on the Settle or Be Better podcast is Sarah Glynn, who's going to be talking to us about moving beyond the mainstream medical institutions with the understanding of healthcare over sick care. So, welcome, Sarah, and over to you. Why don't you begin by telling us a little bit about what stands out for you about your personal health and wellness story?
Thank you so much for having me here. It is truly a privilege to be speaking with you and to get to share my personal journey. I was, like so many people, on my path. I thought that I was winning, but my health indicators were telling me a different story. And ultimately, at what I thought was the pinnacle of my career, I had to take a gigantic pause. I had to stop working so hard to serve and support the external world and take a good look at what it would mean to serve and support myself. So for really the past 8 years, I've continued to do some pretty exciting things, but mostly I've been looking at how does all of this work, all of the work that's happening out there in the world around complementary and alternative health, how does it apply to me personally? What happens if I make myself a big experiment? So I have, it's taken a lot of courage. But I have essentially stepped outside of the conventional medical system and chosen to forge my own path for my health and well-being. And the starting place for this was that I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis when I was 35 years old. At the time, I had an 11-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old son. They are now 19 and 10 and thriving. But I was looking at these beautiful children, and I was saying to myself, I have to win this. I have to win my health. I cannot accept a long-term chronic diagnosis like multiple sclerosis. And because I had trained as a midwife and opened a school to promote midwifery education, and inside of that had been exposed to quite a few exciting complementary and alternative health and healing modalities, herbalism, energy work, and I was aware that there were other ways for me to tackle my health. There were other ways for me to approach what was ultimately a question, and the question was, what's wrong with me? So, when I went to the mainstream, when I went to the doctors and they said, well, what's wrong with you is you have this thing called multiple sclerosis. And I started digging into that diagnosis and I said, this tells me nothing. This feels like a really large umbrella label for something. And it's not telling me like why, the next question, there's the what, and then the next obvious question is why. So I started to explore different approaches, and ultimately made radical shifts in my life. I closed my midwifery school. I left my marriage. I took 2 years off from working in general, focused on meditation and reprogramming my nervous system. I took a lot of walks and spent a lot of time in nature. I wasn't calling it this at the time, but I was essentially biohacking. I was going for swims in the Boulder Creek. I live in Boulder, Colorado, and we have mountain like snow melt that comes off of the big mountains here. And in the spring, I would go plunge in the cold Creek because it felt good. Um, and over time, what happened by changing my diet, by listening, learning how to listen to my body, by selecting healthcare providers that were, yes, some of them were MDs. They were trained in conventional medicine, but they too had decided to step outside of conventional medicine. By tapping into this enormous community that is emerging right now, there, it's cool how much it's growing. Um, I was able to completely heal my body and my nervous system and my soul in in a lot of regards. Um, so here I am, 8 years later, and it does turn out that I have a condition, a hereditary condition called hemochromatosis, which means that my body absorbs significantly more iron than anyone without hemochromatosis. And what was happening was that iron was backing up in my system, and it was in my nervous system. It was in my liver, my pancreas, my thyroid, and those organ systems were first whispering, and I didn't listen, and then they started to yell louder and louder and louder. Um, until I finally started listening. But it did take me about 8 years to finally arrive at the ultimate diagnosis, to get to that question of what is wrong with me, and why. but with some determination and a lot of support and help and love along the way, I was able to arrive here. Um, so my personal journey has largely informed now my professional work. I'm back at it, trying to ultimately support not just midwives but all healers in the world to bring people together, to bring the healers together, to create a platform where anyone who's in a situation like I was in can come and have all of their needs met. So I'm pretty excited. And there's this saying I love. It's breakdown breakthrough. It's when you're in the midst of a crisis, it feels like you cannot see the forest for the trees. But if you just keep walking, if you just keep going, when you get to the other side, it's so powerful to look back and realize that everything was unfolding perfectly. The key is to just not give up, and I found for me, to listen, to really learn how to listen.
Absolutely, that's a beautiful story. And just to say, 8 years is a really long time. I mean, I'm sure that there are a lot of more people out there, who might be going through some serious illnesses that have been diagnosed to them, and this news has been broken to them. And, also they at some point might have thought of going for these alternative options, but to stick through with it for 8 years is not something that we hear very often. So that's really inspiring, and also a great message for the ones out there who are still battling this or hacking their way through these things. It's really great for them to stick through it and also explore a lot more with it. So thank you for sharing that story with us, and it's really good to know you and this little part of your life. And also, what would you say for someone who has just been this news has been broken to them about a certain illness or some diagnosis, and they are really stressed about this, and they might not really have this kind of an exposure that you had even 8 years back, because you were sort of connected with these kind of alternative medicines or these practices. What would you say would be the first few steps for them to even consider this alternative way of going through it?
That's a great question. I would say, first of all, that it depends on the diagnosis. So, and it depends on a lot of variables. I want to be very careful here to not be overly heroic. I do not want to create an impression that every single health diagnosis has a very different underlying root cause that can be addressed through just simple changes to your lifestyle. Um, Ultimately, there are times when we receive a health diagnosis like cancer, heart disease, multiple sclerosis, um, or any of the other sort of related similar metabolic crisis crises that can happen in the system, there are times when it is perfect to go the to take all of the measures to go with the conventional medical system. um, there's something that there's something that happens. There's this polarization that occurs that I've seen over and over again, starting in the midwifery, in the obstetric community. It's like we have the obstetrics and we have the midwives, and then in the middle we have nurse midwives. So the obstetricians are there to handle emergencies, and the nurse midwives who work with them are there to support women in the hospital environment. And then the out of hospital midwives are providing alternative services that a lot of times are really perfect and valuable. But we have had this polarization in that community where the obstetricians are suspicious of the midwives and the midwives are suspicious of the obstetricians. And what happens is it leaves the consumer, the individual, the mother and the family at a loss of like, well, what's right? If I have my baby at home, am I potentially going to kill my baby or die? I mean, it's really like that. That's the fear that shows up. And then for women who, a lot of people will just go into the hospital, right, and assume that they need to do that because of the polarization. It's fear. We just drop right into fear. Everything is fear based. So I want to make sure, as I share my own story, that I'm not amplifying that dynamic, that polarization. So when it comes to chronic illness, it is so individual. And I want to say that the first thing to do is to check in with yourself and figure out what feels safe, and to continue to check in with yourself and to see what feels safe and right at any given moment. And the key is to give yourself permission to change your mind. It's not that you have to go down one path and stick to it. This is, I think, this was the approach that I took, and it really worked. There were times when I did take more heroic measures, and there were times when I said, no, that's not right for me. I'm going to check out what are my other options and do some trial and error and see what works. So it's the process of healing and staying healthy or preventing health. It is not linear, and it is not guaranteed, and it is not a matter of right or wrong. It is a matter of listening. So what I would say, and what do I mean by that? What I mean is that our body is giving us cues all of the time. Our body is giving us a lot of information. And it's that information, again, is different for everyone. But there is a sort of umbrella term called somatic awareness. So I would say that the first thing to do when you receive any kind of concerning diagnosis for your health is to sit and be still and to let everything else be quiet. Just let that all go and listen to what your body is telling you. Listen to what your heart is telling you. If it's right for you, listen to what your angels, ancestors, God, spirit, universe, whatever this dimension, tap into all of the resources that are uniquely yours first. That is my ultimate suggestion. And strengthen that muscle no matter what is happening. If you seek out a care provider whether they are alternative or conventional, make sure, notice how you feel every time you interact with them. Is what they're saying true for you? Are they taking time to really be with you and to really listen? If they are, keep working with them. If they're not, draw a boundary, say no thank you, and look elsewhere. This is how we stay, because no matter what happens, in my mind, it's all about staying in right relationship with ourselves. It's all about waking up every morning and saying, yes, I am honoring myself. I'm doing the best that I could do for me. And I'm letting myself be the leader in this situation, because that power will actually help your body to heal. It's scientifically proven. I don't have the. I wish if I'm going to say something like that, I'd like to have the studies right here with me at my fingertips to back it up. But you know who talks about this really well is one of my favorite authors and doctors. Her name is Lisa Rankin. She talks. She's gone through all of the research and summarized it in one of her books. So I would look up Lisa, but she has done a great job of sharing the importance, the power of the mind in the healing process. So number one, I would say listen. Number two, I would say don't be afraid to say no. And number three, I would say, as I said before, keep going. Even if you have down days or down months or down years, keep finding the resources. Don't give up. If you've had a health diagnosis, even the most extreme ones, don't give up hope.
Absolutely. That's amazing. And that's a really good message to even think about for our listeners. And it happens that, whenever someone this news is broken to someone, they feel like it's their final destination, like it's the final stop. And it's their only option available to them. That right immediate option available to them is the only option. And that's where I think, they can sit with themselves and they can do these three things, and process the information first, and also check in with their bodies and check in with whatever resources that they have. So that's a really great message. Thank you for sharing that with us. And also moving on, you talk about your non-negotiables when it comes to health and well-being, and this can be for anyone, someone who might be in a seemingly healthy state of mind and body, and something that they can absolutely take on in terms of the nutrition or in terms of the biohacks, whatever resources that might be available to them. So if you can just share that with us, that what would be your few non-negotiables when it comes to health and wellness.
Yeah, beautiful. So there is potential if we are not paying attention to our bodies and we are not paying attention to these four non-negotiables, then ultimately we will become out of balance and end up in crisis, which is where we started the conversation. So even if you're in crisis, these things are still non-negotiables. But what really excites me is shifting, like talking about what we can do proactively, preventatively, to avoid the crisis in the first place. One of the things that I've found in my on my own journey and through my work is that actually 75% of the time, health crises can be avoided through basic changes to lifestyle. Now, that sounds a lot easier than it actually is. So I want to acknowledge that this is not linear, it's not perfect, and everyone is unique and individual, and you're going to have good days and bad days with all of this. But again, keep going, because I think that if you really pay attention to these non-negotiables, then you're going to put yourself in the league of you're going to drastically increase the chances that you will not only live long, but be healthy the whole way through. So the first one is food and diet. The second one is mindfulness. And within those, within food and diet, I would pay attention to your glucose, your gut, your macros and your micros, and I can talk more about those things. And with mindfulness, which I did start to talk about it a little bit, that moment of sitting and being quiet. How can you do that well if you're in crisis? Well, you need to practice. And there are some amazing tools. And my favorite tools are Vipassana meditation, somatic awareness, parts work, and breath and vagus nerve training. So yes, I think that's why I love Indian culture and people so much. It was one of my favorite places in the world to work, and still some of my very best friends are from India. I think it's because you have embedded in your culture deep roots in meditation. And also, actually, with food and diet, Ayurvedic practices have come out of India and informed many of the modern diets. So just big kudos. India is such a profound place. There are so many people in India, and there's so much going on. But underlying it, there is this deep, deep history that I think has set you guys up well, and we have a lot to learn over here in the United States and around the world from you all. So I feel humbled to be asked to share information by you. So the breath and so um, the vagus nerve, it starts at the root of your skull, and it goes down and it runs through your heart and your respiratory system, your lungs, and also through your gut. So the signaling that comes from your brain it's why when you are nervous or stressed, you will feel your breath, your respiratory rate will increase. You'll start breathing, you'll have more rapid breathing, or you may hold your breath, you may contract. And it's also why you get that nervous feeling in your gut. It's like, most of the time, if you're sitting quietly and noticing, where do I feel this stress or pressure in my body? A lot of times it will be in your stomach if what you're feeling is stress. And ultimately that oftentimes that signal there, like underlying it, is fear. Um, so the good news about the vagus nerve is that yes, whenever there's a fear signal in the old, this is the oldest part of the brain, right? It's the original. Some people call it the reptilian part of the brain. I don't know. I like to just this is the primal part of your brain. It's a little bit more, to me, it's more primal. So it's the part of your brain that is there to protect you, to help you run when you're in danger. It's the part of your brain that's there to say, this person or this situation is not safe, and I need to, for self-preservation reasons, need to remove myself in whatever way possible. There are, of course, different responses that can occur based on your own life experience. So you may run. You may be a fighter. You may be a person that when you're afraid, it's going to trigger that like fight mode. You may be that, like, if you're about to get into a car accident, you may yell at the person, right? That's a fight response. If you're about to get into it, if somebody, almost rear ends you or does something in traffic, you may say, like, you may just freeze. You may not even know what just happened. So you're going to have more of a freeze response. You may actually have a fawn response. So you may be a person that is like, oh my gosh, are they okay? What's going on with them? Like, you may be, I'm more of a fawn. We can all be all of these things at different times. I'm sort of being light, and I'm trying to use an example of like traffic, because it's something we can probably all relate to. We probably all can look at that example and realize, like, oh yeah, I have this sort of primary reaction that's going to show up. But the truth is, we all will, it depends on the situation, and we all will resort. These are all tools. All of these responses are ultimately tools that our primal brain is there to basically pull out of the toolbox. And it's the vagus nerve. And what it does is it activates the vagus nerve. So when that vagus nerve starts signaling, it starts signaling your breath, like, it gets you ready to go. It starts signaling your stomach. It's interfering with your digestion. Ultimately is what's going on there, which is a great thing if you need to run, right? You basically need to be lighter. So you you may want to feel like you need to eliminate and run, right? But ultimately, that primal part of the brain does not know how to distinguish between situations that are truly unsafe and situations that require a different kind of response, where we need to have that the frontal part of the brain. I did study psychology originally, by the way. We talked about midwifery, but my whole journey began long ago in undergrad with psychology. So it's been long a passion of mine, and I try to stay on top of what is the most current science and research, though I'm not a practicing psychologist. Again, there are a lot of people who who you can bring in, who know a lot even more about this. And I will try to send you some links and resources to some of my favorite authors, and also people who are doing work to help retrain the vagus nerve. But anyway, so the vagus nerve doesn't know the difference, and most of the time you don't actually. It's not a life or death situation, though it can feel like a life or death situation, for certain parts of you, including the primal part, but also including that inner child. Like if there's been any trauma that you've had in your life, um, you may be more sensitive to certain situations. If you are in conflict over even something relatively small and somebody raises their voice, that could trigger a part of you that was yelled at as a young child. If somebody comes to you, if they shame you, in some way, if you feel embarrassed, that may that part of you that is a young child, if you had a parent that used shame to control you basically and get you to do what they needed you to do, it could trigger that primal brain to say, this is danger, danger, danger. So now we've got the vagus nerve doing all the things, to get us ready to, to save us. And the beautiful thing is that it's a two-way street. So the first is to learn. You cannot do vagus nerve training without taking time to understand your triggers. So the first step of vagus nerve training, people always want to dive into the deep end. And I'm going to back it up here and slow it down and say, actually, the very first step to vagus nerve training is to start to become aware of your triggers. So when you're in a situation, that simply means you start to become aware, oh, my heart is beating, I'm breathing faster, or I'm holding my breath. I feel like my stomach is unsettled. These are like minor, you actually have to notice that you're feeling that, and then make a connection in that moment, slow everything down and connect to what is causing this. And is it actually dangerous? So this is where that meditative having this building out your skill set for meditation through Vipassana or somatic awareness, heart-centered meditation, and also being some of that parts work that I talked about. All these things go together; they play together. The parts work is acknowledging that there is some part of you that's feeling really angry right now, like, why are you driving that way? But there's another part of you that's feeling scared, like, oh my gosh, like I could have just gotten into an accident. Right. So being able to separate these things out, understand, feel the body cues, and understand in the moment that something is off. And then like all of the trigger, being aware of your triggers, being aware of your parts, slowing things down, seeing that, being able to kind of look in, on this, all of this comes together. And then you can actually use simple breath techniques to bring you back into the moment. Because what happens when that primal brain kicks in is that we lose track of time. Literally, the part of our brain that tracks time shuts down and we go back. Like our brain is in child mode, our brain is in survival mode. So we can send it a message that we can go the other direction and send our brain the message that it's all good here with simple breath exercises. One that really works for me is a simple 4 count in and holding for 4, and then 4 count out and holding for 4. There are some amazing breathwork teachers. There are a lot of amazing breathwork teachers in the world. One of my truly favorites are Casper van der Meulen. He's based in the Netherlands. Also, if you're a woman and you're looking for a female breath teacher, Kristen Weitzel, who's based here in the United States. She combines the breath and the cold. And then, of course, if you're into breath and cold, there's Wim Hof, and his daughter Laura Hof, who are doing. They've really brought this up. They're kind of the originators of this. I think I would dare to say, and they're lovely. So you can train through the Wim Hof method. You can train through Casper van der Meulen's method. You can work with people like Kristen Weitzel, and again, there are many, many, many others out there who are all wonderful. Those are just top of mind right now for me. So doing the breathwork practices proactively, just like you meditate proactively, will give you that tool in the moment when you realize you're being triggered, when you feel your body getting out of sorts, even in traffic, if somebody isn't driving well, you'll remember, okay, I'm going to take 4 breaths in, hold, 4 breaths out, hold, 4 breaths in. It's called box breathing. Um, there's another tool that I really love. There's a group, they're called Heart Math. And they actually, if you're one of those people that like devices, uh, they've got this thing you can clip on your ear, and it goes into your phone, and it has an app, and it will like regulate your breathing, and it will show you how, if you focus on your heart and you do this really steady breathing, it'll show you how it actually calms your heart rate variability. So it's like, if you want that instant feedback, I would recommend Heart Math. But pretty much any way you go about it, the breath is the tool that you can use. It is the communication tool through the vagus nerve back to that primal part of your brain that will get you back into the present moment and help you react to a situation according to your highest self. So this makes a difference when I'm parenting with my kids. This makes a difference at work. This makes a difference when it makes a difference when I'm out being physical and taking on physical challenges like kite surfing or climbing a mountain, or it basically helps in any situation. So I would say breath work is a big one, and it will help with your stress reduction. And ultimately, what's happening there is you're training your vagus nerve. The vagus nerve. The last thing I'll say here is something I find really interesting, is that there are some studies out there. I was just talking with a colleague about this, that COVID actually, the virus has been shown to have an effect on the vagus nerve. So if you're feeling like you used to be better at handling stress and currently it's more difficult for you, I would actually encourage you. I mean, it can't hurt. We can wait for all the data and science to come in, but meanwhile, it can't hurt to really get into a breathwork practice. That breathwork practice is helping to retrain and strengthen that vagus nerve, just simple box breathing. And there are a lot of other techniques to train your vagus nerve, which are outside of my area of expertise. I would refer to, again, I'll send you some links and resources, because there are people who have dedicated their life to just this topic. And I think I'm so grateful to all the people that are helping educate us about this and bring awareness to it. It's fun. It's really good. And it's fun, right? It's fun
Absolutely.
too. Mhm.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. That was really detailed. And just to put it down to a shorter form and also conclude it for audience and that I understand it better, is the first thing is to understand the triggers that we have, right? Like you said, in our body, and whenever what situations trigger those things and where are we feeling it exactly. And also to proactively practicing breath work, any type, like you can, like you said, there are so many other options, and I'm sure a lot of people are already aware of Wim Hof methods somewhere or the other, and there are great guided breathing practices out there that you can definitely refer to. And also, in the end, we are building this practice that we are cueing in the breath work whenever we feel triggered, and we feel these feelings in our body, right? That's what is the conclusion of this. And I also want to know, like, why are we training the vagus nerve in the long run? Like, what is our actual goal in doing that? And in terms of also the different aspects and different benefits of it, as in what changes in our biology when we are doing this particularly, and in the long run, what would it really help us with?
It's ultimately what we're doing through a lot. All of this comes back to your stress response. So cold exposure, breath work, vagus nerve training, even balancing your gut, your microbiome, and paying attention to your blood sugar levels. All of this puts your body into homeostasis. It's all about balance, which gives us an ability to deal with stress. And when we are not able to deal with stress, we end up with heightened inflammation, and a cascade of pressures on the different organ systems in the body. So it's going far out here. It's all interconnected. So we can't talk about the nervous system and breath work and vagus nerve without also really acknowledging that when we don't have a handle on our stress response, we're putting stress on our liver. We're putting stress on our pancreas. It dysregulates our blood sugar, which over time dysregulates, causes insulin sensitivity. It puts pressure on the heart. And all of this is what ultimately leads to metabolic disease. And it is also what ultimately leads to cancer. So to be preventative with your health, like the baseline here is pay attention to your diet and pay attention to your stress, your nervous system, your stress response. Doing this proactively will help you live a long, happy life. And also, if you are in crisis with your health, do not underestimate the power of taking time to get into doing breath work. It's never too late. This will only help whatever treatments you've decided to undergo. If you're in chemotherapy, in extreme situations, breath work can help you to navigate that crisis, and also help bring your body into equilibrium in smaller ways so that it can do its job to heal. So it's all about homeostasis. It's all about bringing your body back to homeostasis.
Understood. That really puts it into perspective of what is our goal and what is the intention of doing this. And it's very true that we are constantly in a mode of fight or flight response and putting our body under so much stress that unfortunately it's become the new normal, and we don't even know what does it feel like being out of stress. And that's why it's really the need of the hour to definitely focus on these aspects and start training, because it's like one of the easiest, accessible, cheapest thing available to us right now is to work on a breath work. I mean, there's no excuse when it comes to that. Like, there's no excuse like I don't have time or I don't have money, because everything fits into that, and we can definitely incorporate this right away without any hesitation. So thank you for sharing that with us. And coming to the nutrition part of it, if you can just elaborate more about it, is that because there's just so much confusion, there are so many food wars, and all of these different opposing views when it comes to nutrition. And now more than ever, I mean, like, should I become a carnivore, should I become a vegan, should I what should I do for my gut microbiome? There's so many other things out there, but just to like simplify it in some ways, and what would you say are the first few things that we can definitely start incorporating in a nutrition?
Okay, yes. The big thing is that our bodies are unique, and our bodies change throughout the day. They change throughout the month, especially for women, but also for men. They change over the years. So we have cycles and seasons, women and men. And to wouldn't it be nice if there were just one simple answer for the question of what should I eat? But what I call it the listening diet. I don't know. I call it the listening diet. It's really about tuning into your body. And what I think is really helpful in terms of listening is, yes, somatic awareness. Like, first, does this feel, how do I feel after I eat something? Obviously, but also there are a lot of great ways. There's a lot of great ways to measure. I like data. So I think that there are some really great apps popping up right now that will enable you to order a continuous glucose monitor. I'm having a ton of fun myself and both of my children. This used to be only available if you had diabetes. Only in extreme situations were we saying, now let's take time to pay attention to your blood sugar, so that you can keep it within range. Well, it's actually, come to find out, very useful to proactively, preventatively become aware of your blood sugar levels. So I'm going to use this as an example because there's a lot to talk about in this larger question of diet. With what I have found personally with my blood sugar, the discovery that I've made, I've spent 6 weeks monitoring what happens to my glucose levels at night. This monitor will show you all 24 hours a day. It will track exactly what's happening 24 hours a day. So what I have noticed is that, well, this all began, I noticed that my blood sugar was dipping at night. Um, as I expressed at the beginning of this conversation, it took 8 years for me to figure out what was going on. And you know what actually helped me finally get to it was measuring my blood sugar. And how random. Like, I wasn't measuring my blood sugar to figure out what was happening with my nervous system. That's not what I set out to do. But because of my work, I had friends that were jumping on this trend of measuring your blood sugar. And there were people posting fun things of like, well, I just drank my high sugar, milky coffee in the morning and look what happened. Or I ate this candy bar and look what happened. So I was like, this is fun. I totally want to try this. So I got one, put it on, and I was like, huh, my blood sugar is really low. I'm like hypoglycemic in the middle of the night, and it's not being caused by any of the foods that I'm eating. So I was like, that's something deeper in my system. And I had been having a resurgence of nervous system dysregulation, even though I do my breath work and my meditation, and I'm like hyper vigilant about my food and all the things. So when I saw that metric, I was like, okay, I need to really dig deeper. And so in other words, that personal story, what that means is that uh, the blood sugar, these metrics can be an indicator of what's happening in your system, and everyone is going to be unique. But I would say blood sugar is one that it's going to be big. It's trending. Everyone will be doing this. So I found that I was hypoglycemic at night. And then I also discovered that I could not eat oatmeal or toast in the morning. And I couldn't have much in terms of carbohydrates in the afternoon. But I can and should have, my body actually needs carbohydrates at night. Okay, this is the exact opposite of what almost everyone is telling you, except for if we look at the Mediterranean diet. I've spent a lot of time in Italy. So I thought, okay, the Italians have had it right. No wonder, Sardinia is like a blue zone or whatever, because blue zone meaning a place where people tend to live longer and to be more healthy. They're actually having a healthy serving of carbohydrates in the evening, and slightly later into the evening. So this is not, I'm not giving anyone a formula to say, well, we should all now eat carbohydrates in the evening and only fats for breakfast because that's what worked for me. This is to say, without tracking and really going deeper into these metrics, without that data, how do we know? And also, when you start to become data driven in your approach to health and wellness, which is essentially the heart of biohacking, right? People are like, what is this biohacking thing? Well, it's using data to hack your health. So anyway, I discovered the perfect. First of all, I discovered that the reason my blood sugar was dropping at night was because my liver and pancreas were distressed. And as I started to do more tests, that's how I discovered that I have iron overload and hemochromatosis. So it happened to be that piece of data that got me thinking about and acting on, taking steps to finally get to the root cause of what was like causing my hypothyroidism and my nervous system dysregulation and everything else. But then secondly, I figured out that I can tune my diet throughout the day and have a bowl of pasta at night, eat my favorite locally sourced handmade sourdough bread from the baker, and maintain my energy all day long. So I think I just can't say enough good things about glucose. And I would also, if you're interested in this, I would point you to Danielle Hamilton here in the United States. She's doing amazing things. She's got master classes on insulin resistance and also diet, and she can help point you towards the continuous glucose monitors. And she is a wealth of knowledge. She's a wealth of knowledge. So I would point you to Danielle for more on that. And highly encourage people to start paying attention to their glucose. If you're already a person who has diabetes, then I would say that you may already be doing the glucose monitor. And I would say to focus, they're telling us that we can't go back once we have diabetes. And I won't try to make an argument about that. But I will say that there are ways to make sure that the diabetes doesn't encroach on your heart and your thyroid and other organ systems. And it is really worth taking other proactive steps like focusing on gut health, paying attention to iron levels in your system, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, gut health is another area that people are talking about a lot, but I don't think people really understand. So, blood sugar is uh, again, it's brand new. Like you will have reactions when you put on these glucose monitors. If you're out in a more mainstream community, they're like, "What do you have diabetes? Like, why are you tracking blood sugar? I still want to eat my sugar." They're gonna be guarded. They're not going to want to give up their chai tea, right? They're not going to want to give that up. So they're going to maybe react to you. Over time, people will adopt to this. I think it will become more and more popular. But it's brand new, so there will still be the people that are against it or skeptical about it. The gut health, I think it used to be this way, right? People used to be really skeptical about gut health. They're like, whatever, okay, what is gut health? What are you talking about? And now it's like, oh, yeah, gut health is really important. Pretty much everyone agrees on this topic. However, there's still a lot of misinformation. There's still a lot of confusion around gut health. So my tips on gut health are, number one, to eat fermented foods, to have a bit of sauerkraut or miso or other fermented food with pretty much every meal. Always go diet first. We don't need to go extreme and supplement. If you're having gut dysregulation, so if you're having gas, if you're having bloating and discomfort, if you're having heartburn, do not ignore those things. I'm just like amazed. People, we just have made it acceptable that, oh, I have some gas or I'm burping or I have some heartburn after a meal, that like I'm just gonna take some Tums and move on. This is, if your gut is out of whack, it is the beginning. In that, if your whole system were like a wheel, your wheel is stopping right there. All of those enzymes, the protein digestion, this affects your other major organs, your nervous system, your health. So do not ignore these symptoms. The good news is it's actually pretty easy to address these things, especially if you're proactive. So I would say aloe vera. Definitely look into just drinking a little aloe vera shot. Apple cider vinegar. Look into drinking apple cider vinegar. 20 minutes, both of these would be 20 minutes before meals. Apple cider vinegar is going to be more stimulating, and aloe vera is going to be more calming, and both have an effect on the pH of your system. So for you, sometimes of day, it may be better to choose one or the other. Sometimes of the month, sometimes of the year, sometimes in your life, depending on how your system is tuning to it. Don't get stuck on, I only do ACV, I only do apple cider vinegar, I only do aloe vera. But I would say utilize both of those tools, experiment with them and see what starts to feel good. Fermented foods, aloe vera and apple cider vinegar, easy, low-hanging fruit, super inexpensive. If you want to go bigger, I would look into pancreatic digestive enzymes. I love a company here in the US called Master Supplements. And there are others, but you can start there. You can if you're not in the US, you can go onto their Master Supplements website and see what their formulas are and find something similar wherever you're living. I do recommend digestive enzymes. They really help. And in because we have depletion of soil, and we've really messed up our food systems in the moment, hopefully we'll fix them. It is important to supplement a little bit with those digestive enzymes. And then the sort of farthest out in terms of intervention would be a probiotic. Now, this is the thing. We all started with probiotics. It drives me. The midwives model of care says you start with the simple. the simplest thing. We don't start with the most intense intervention. We start with the easiest thing: fermented foods, aloe vera, apple cider vinegar. Let's throw in some digestive enzymes. Let's take a couple weeks to try these things out and acclimate. If you're still having issues, then I would go to a probiotic. And one of the probiotic, it's not actually a probiotic. It works. It helps to address yeast in your system. It's called Saccharomyces boulardii. I always take Saccharomyces boulardii when I'm traveling because it really helps with any of those unwanted parasites or things that might enter into your system. It really helps to control those by controlling the sort of yeast balance in our system. We all have yeast in our system, and as you know, probably most people know, if yeast overgrowth happens, then it's more difficult for our system to assimilate different foods and fight off different viruses and so forth. So Saccharomyces boulardii, definitely when you're traveling, always. And then if you're trying these other things and not having success, I would say do a 30-day on that. Those, I'm not a doctor, but these are over-the-counter items, so I think it's safe for me to strongly advocate for them. They've worked for me. They've worked for a lot of people, and I would. I think it's okay for me to recommend those. Hopefully, I don't get myself into trouble. And of course, if you're having bleeding or any major issues, please do go see a doctor. Do not ignore those things. And if what the doctor is telling you doesn't make sense, I would encourage you to try an Ayurvedic practitioner. This is where Ayurveda is amazing. And I would encourage you to talk to nutritionists, dietitians, and so forth. If, you know, and be experimental. The gut is made to heal. Our body is made for homeostasis. It's really about finding that formula for you with your blood sugar and with your gut health that will bring you back to homeostasis. By regulating those two things, you empower your body to do its job, and it will help your nervous system. It will help prevent chronic illness and let you show up with a lot of energy during the day, help your sleep, and help you be the highest, best version of yourself. So.
Amazing. That was like super detailed, and I hope that our listeners are taking notes because there's just so many takeaways from this particular episode. And also to conclude with, you were telling me something about, what your conventional doctor won't really look for when you probably go with some sort of an illness, or even like some sort of an infection, viral infection, any sort of a thing, that's something that your doctor would not look into, and it wouldn't really hurt for you to find that out for yourself. If you could just shed some light on that, because I've been following you, and you really post some great updates every single day about what is it that you are testing out currently, or how you're navigating your way through this. And it can be very overwhelming for someone very new to this, and it can be scary for someone not telling you what to do and you yourself navigating through it, right? So can you just give us a little tips on that, and also explore that topic a little?
Sure. I'm going to go back to the midwife's model of care here again to start out with. This is the fundamental difference between a midwife and an obstetrician, is that the obstetrician is trained to intervene and help you to take care of everything, right? They're taking care of everything. They will tell you what to do. And the relationship that gets set up there is like the obstetrician wants to make sure they're always right because you are in their care. And there are so many obstetricians doing great work in that regard. But ultimately, we as women, we're going into the birth room like, here's my birth, here's my body, the baby, like make sure this goes well, right? And that is kind of how conventional medicine goes in general. The midwives, the home birth midwives, what they say is, this is your birth, this is your body, and they will remind you that your body, our bodies have been evolving for quite a long time, and we're designed to give birth. As we are designed as women to give birth. So if we and then the midwives are careful. The modern midwives nowadays, we have all of these tools, these diagnostic tools. So they'll do your blood work, they'll take your blood pressure, and they're basically there to let us know, like to track any signals that say, okay, we need to intervene, we need help. And they'll send you to the obstetrician if it's an emergency. Like the good midwives will always send you to the obstetrician and put your care into someone's hands if need be. But it's the same thing. When, like, if we just take that analogy and we apply it to pretty much any aspect of our health, unfortunately, right now, at this point in time, a lot of us have been trained to hand our health over to someone else. This is where we get into trouble, even just diets. Forget about going to the doctor's office. We all want to read some book or listen to some expert and have them tell us exactly what diet we need to follow. And it boils down to trust. So my key message is trust your body. And the reason you see me posting things, because I trust my body. So in order to really listen, I have to trust. If I don't trust my body, I'm not going to listen to it. Right. So it's really all about we've got to totally shift the paradigm to a paradigm of trusting the body. The body is designed to survive. The body is designed to come back to homeostasis. We are designed for longevity. We are designed to climb mountains, to move mountains, to achieve big, bold, beautiful things. And this idea that we're somehow at war with our body, that our body is forsaking us, that we need to go somewhere else outside of ourselves to get help, it's inherently flawed. I understand how it's evolved. I have a ton of compassion for even myself, in the times when when I'm handing it all over to someone else or wishing I could and cursing the fact that I can't. When it took 8 years to get my diagnosis, and I discovered that the doctors had helped me make progress, but none of them actually figured it out for me. Man, I was mad. I had to sit for a couple of days and deal with my own anger at all these other people who didn't figure it out for me. So it's real. I don't know how else. It's real right now that we have not been taught to trust our bodies, and we've been told over and over and over again that what we believe, even when we do try to listen to our bodies, and we bring this up. Now let's get back to the doctor's office. The doctors will often, they're trying to do their best, right? And they're trying to make sure they don't make mistakes. So if this doctor has not gone to school and trained for gut health, they are not going to talk to you about gut health, because if they say something about gut health and they're wrong, the way that the system is set up, now it's their fault. The doctors are just as disempowered as the individuals. The doctors are not empowered to ask you a bunch of questions. In my version of the perfect healthcare system, we have doctors who say, oh, okay, well, let's start with you. Let me ask you, what do you think here? And what have you found? And are you willing to try this? And what about that? This would not be miraculous, but when we do go into doctors' offices, they are constrained. They are constrained to only talk to you about things that they know, to only ask questions that they can actually answer. And so not because they're out to get you or because they're ignorant. I've had a couple of times, my child's pediatrician, I suspect that when I go in with all of my questions about vaccines and so forth, now I've known her for 19 years. I'm like, she actually knows what I'm talking about, but she's constrained by her scope of practice. She can't answer me. She still has to go right back to whatever those pharmaceuticals companies and regulatory agencies have told her are within the bounds of what she can do to maintain her certification in her practice. And of course she wants to keep practicing. That's what she's dedicated her life to. So I think it's really important to understand this when you go to the doctor, that they are confined by a very strict set of rules that are being handed down to them. They are not empowered necessarily to step out of the confines. They really have to stay in the lane. So it's key for us to become advocates of our own health and to become work in partnership with our practitioners. If you go to a practitioner and they don't want to do that with you, they're the wrong practitioner. Then they're all in their ego and they've got some work to do. They need to do some Vipassana and other things, right? But there are a lot of practitioners who acknowledge their limitations and want to work with you. So I would seek those folks out. And the other fun thing is that there are a lot of diagnostic companies popping up that will give you access to a continuous glucose monitor, that will give you access to blood work to test your all of your vitamin levels, that will test your gut to see if you have any parasites. And you can order your own lab work. You can go to a lab and request iron, thyroid, all of these labs you can request. It's different in different countries, but here in the United States, we have a lot of services even popping up to come to your home. But my favorite lab for preventative diagnostics on the nutrition side is Genova Diagnostics. I'm actually going to partner with them. I'm really excited to make this even more widely available to individuals through Dragonfly. And then the couple of continuous glucose monitor companies that are out there are NutriSense. I think they're my favorite because they also provide a lot of hands-on support that you get to work with a nutritionist coach. There's also a company called Veri, VERI, and a company called Levels. These aren't necessarily cheap, but they're not necessarily inexpensive. But I would say investing in diagnostics upfront will save you not only money, but time and energy, which is more valuable than gold. So yeah, doing routinely every year, I do all of my blood work. I check all of my vitamin levels. I check my gut health. I check my iron levels, my thyroid, my hormones. And if I have flags on those diagnostics, I go to the doctor, right? And now I have information, they have information, they have data, they can look, and if they don't have the answer, they can refer me out. So this has helped me to get in right relationship with the doctors. Again, the data. Data is a safe zone for everybody. Yeah. So, okay. So the data is good, but also, the last thing I will say here is that when I was originally diagnosed, it was brand new. People were not testing for hemochromatosis and iron overload, which is the condition I actually have. So sometimes the data is not yet available. So this is where we cannot talk about being data centric without also acknowledging that if you're feeling something deep in your soul, in your bones, you know that you don't have the answer yet. Keep praying, keep sitting with yourself, keep asking for the answers, and they will come. It's just a matter of time, but don't ignore, never ignore what your body is saying, ever. Even if there's no data, even if there's no doctor, keep listening, keep asking questions.
Absolutely, that's a great message. And what often happens is that the two aspects that you spoke about, one is being intuitive, and also the other one is being data driven. These are two really polarizing ways to go about it, and people are either choosing one of these teams. So it's very rare that you would see someone talk or practice this in their life where they are actually having best of the both worlds, and implementing both of these things when and how needed, because it's either of those things usually when it comes to this. And also when it comes to diagnosis, is what happens is that there's so much fear around it, and also going for these tests on your own is very alien for people, because my doctor didn't tell me, or it only happens when you go in with some sort of issues, and then the doctor advises you to go and get those tests done. That's the usual way to go about it. And to go and do these tests and diagnose these things and understand these things, all these data on your own is very alien. And I think that's something that we can definitely build on. And I'm sure that our listeners should definitely go and research more, and we get introduced to a lot more other studies and speakers and practitioners, and not just base it on one episode, but like you rightly said, to definitely go and find it out for themselves. So that was a very great message. Thank you for sharing that with us.
You're welcome. And now that I am healthy and well, I am hot on the path. I'm back, and I'm putting all of my knowledge and connections and experience to work on my platform, Dragonfly. So we're building master classes to become a master of your own health, to learn more about all of the things I talked about, featuring several of the people that I talked about and many more. We are also getting ready to launch a marketplace where you can order those diagnostics and find the practitioners who understand how to work with you in those diagnostics, and who will also be able to recommend master classes and courses along with supplements and different products. So everything is going to be under one roof. I will be working on this for the rest of my life. And we're just at the very beginning, but I am excited. And as soon as I have more, as soon as I'm ready, I would love for anyone in this audience who wants to be a part of the very early phases of this to come join us. We're creating a movement. There are so many amazing healers and practitioners and researchers and scientists and doctors out there. It's time. Like the way the tide is turning. And I do believe we're on the precipice of a much healthier future for people, and then ultimately for the planet, because as we heal ourselves, we will also heal this beautiful planet that we live on. And so I'll share more with you about that as it comes out, and hope that everyone here listening will join us on Dragonfly.
That's amazing. And I was, in fact, just going to ask you that, what reasons would be someone having to reach out to Dragonfly and to tell us a little more about. So thank you for sharing that with us. And also, if currently someone would like to reach out to Dragonfly, what reasons could they have, and what could they really look for when they're reaching out for Dragonfly right now?
Yeah, so right now, well, we're getting ready to host an event for women here in the United States in November. It's called Dragonfly Live. So if you are a woman and want to learn about biohacking and women's health and to be part of this growing community, please come to the US and join us. Megha Gupta from there in India will be one of our key presenters. I hope that you'll be there with me as well. We haven't talked about that yet, but we need to have you there. And starting this summer, so it's summer of 2023 at dragonflyhealth.io, you will be able to come and sign up for masterclasses, sign up for diagnostics, sign up for connecting with healers virtually and locally. And again, it will all be new, but we'll be growing quickly, I have a feeling. So
That's
yeah,
lovely, and that's very soon, just the next month. So
yeah.
that's a great news for us and for all the biohackers out there, because there really needs to be a place where all this information comes together, and someone can find this at one place and really educate and dive deep into it. Because there are many books out there, many speakers, and many practitioners out there, but to have it at one place and have the exposure with this would be really amazing. So I'm really excited for that, and I can't wait to know more and learn more from you.
Beautiful. I'm hoping in 2024 to have a Dragonfly Live India. I really am hoping to do that. Let's all get together. Yeah.
That would be amazing.
Any
That's
other
it. So as
questions?
we conclude the episode today, do you have any last thoughts or messages to leave our audience with?
Yeah, I think that my final message is that we are all being reborn every single day. Birth, we have a birthday. We do come into this world on one specific day, and we leave this world on another. But in the time between when we're born and when we die, we undergo a daily rebirth. And so I just want to celebrate the continual birthing process that we are all uniquely in, and to send a lot of love, just a lot of love and nurturing and support and encouragement, and power for each of you listening, women and men, and whatever you're birthing today, whatever is being born in you today.
That's a beautiful message. Thank you for sharing that with us. And thank you once again, Sarah, for being on a podcast today. This was very insightful. I mean, someone should be taking vigorous notes along this podcast as they listen to this, because there's just so much insight in this one episode. And they can definitely reach out to you. The details are in the description below. And, reach out to Dragonfly or to you to know more and to find out and learn more, because there's just so much more to explore. So thank you once again for being on our podcast. And we are really grateful to have you here today.
Thank you for having me. It's truly an honor.
That's it for today's episode. I am Sakshi Pawar, and I'll be your host for the Settle or Be Better podcast. So stay tuned where we bring more inspiring stories your way. You know the drill. Subscribe to the Settle or Be Better podcast, like, share, and comment on our videos. And hit the bell icon, because you don't want to miss the mind-boggling health discussions we're about to bring for you. Why settle when you can be better?